Hey, Wid fam, this is Leo with One Happy Widow. We are live today. We are talking about widow's brain, widow's fog, brain fog, grief fog. There's all kinds of names for it, but it's pretty much all the same thing, caused by a lot of the same brain functions. And so I just call it widow's brain usually because that's the easiest thing to remember. And if you have experienced it, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. You may have experienced it and didn't realize it was a real thing or there was an actual name for it. And so today we're going to learn about it. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about examples of, what you can expect from it. And we're going to talk about some science behind it and why it actually happens, what causes it. And I think if we can understand why it happens, it will make us feel a lot better when we are experiencing it because we'll know that there's a scientific reason for it. And we'll also know that it's not a permanent thing. Okay. It can get better. Time helps. And there are some actual things that we can do to kind of help get over it, get past it, handle it maybe a little bit better. So, and I see we have our first person chatting. Hello, Wid fam. Laurie says hello. Hello, Laurie. So feel free to post in and let us know that you're here. Let us know where you're from. So what I'm going to do today, I'm not going to get into a lot of the fluff. I'm going to get straight into the topic. And then, because I was doing some scientific research, which is like Google, right? So I'm looking up some stuff on Google so that I can, sort of get some research, some real stuff that will let us know why is this happening to us. And the more I researched, the more stuff that I found. So I ended up with several pages worth of things. So hopefully it won't bog you down too much. But so if you've got some examples of some times when you've suffered from widow's fog or widow's brain, when I get to the end of my presentation and when I get finished talking about all the stuff, we'll talk about, we'll go in and read sometimes some examples from you guys. And, some of them could be pretty humorous. You have to laugh about stuff sometimes or else you'll cry all the time. And so if you have some examples, hold on to them. When we get to the end, I will open up the chat for that and read some examples of, when we have had some widow's brain and maybe we can share some. And at least that will let you know that you are not alone in this. If you're suffering from it, it is temporary. It does get better and it is totally normal. It is actually expected to happen because once you hear about why it all happens, you'll be like, wow, no wonder my brain doesn't work right because of all these other things. So we've got Pamela from Phoenix. We've got Jana from Tennessee. We have Janet from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we have Becky from Mississippi. So we don't have anybody from any other countries. Usually we've got somebody like from way over on the other side of the earth. But, sometimes with the time differences, it kind of gets weird. But okay, so the reason why I chose this topic today was because in the last like 2 weeks, I have suffered from so much of widow's brain that I'm kind of wondering what the crap is going on because I feel like I have lost my mind in the last 2 weeks. And I don't know if it's because like I've had more stress or just more changes going on. I really don't know. But let me just give you a couple of examples. I'm just going to give you a small list of the things that I have forgotten about in just the past 2 weeks. I left my pocketbook in JP's truck and don't even remember putting it in there. And that was on a Friday night. And then Monday, I was supposed to go meet my sister for lunch. And JP texts me and he's like, "Oh, by the way, your pocketbook's in my truck. It's got my license in it. It's got my money in it." And I was like, "Well, you know what? It's fine. I will just make sure that I drive really safe and hope that I don't get pulled over without a license." So I go to crank the car. Well, I forgot to put gas in my car before I had come home. And so I was on low fuel. And so I was about to go meet her on zero gas and no license and no money. And so I had to go searching through the change jar to pick up some money so that I could get some gas in my car just so I could go for a ride to go meet my sister for lunch. On the week that we went like we went on vacation 2 weeks ago to Tennessee. During that week, I totally forgot that both of my kids had therapy appointments. They have therapy appointments every week. I don't know why, but I totally forgot that they had them. And I could have gotten them there. Like their sister was here with them watching them. All I had to do was say, hey, make sure that they get to therapy at this time and this time. Just totally forgot, like totally blanked. So they missed therapy. Both of them missed therapy that week. And then the next week, I missed a therapy appointment for Carter. And then I almost missed a therapy appointment for Dallas. I don't know why. I just kept forgetting their therapy. So, like I said, they go every week. It's not like something new or different. Hello, Carol. Carol from Virginia. So we got a lot of people over here on the East Coast. Nice. I forgot 2 paperwork documents for my job that I was supposed to do this week. And I'm on spring break, but I was still supposed to do it because of a deadline. And I didn't do it. So luckily it's not a legal deadline that I missed. It's just a suggested deadline for my job that I missed. They like to have the paperwork in a certain amount of time before the meeting actually happens. And I did not do that. So I will probably get into a slight bit of trouble for that. Not trouble. I'll probably get like a little slap on the wrist for that because I have no excuse. I just forgot. I have been trying to drink more water. And because I haven't been drinking enough water, this is how much water I've drank today. This. And I'm supposed to drink at least 3 full of these, and it's already 4 o'clock. That's probably not going to happen because if it gets too late in the day for me to drink my water, then I'm up all night having to pee. And so I have not been, I keep forgetting to drink my water. I don't know what I need to do to remind myself to drink my water. Hello. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right. Javelina Flips from sunny Tucson. Oh, it's Annie. Okay. Annie, that's much better. So somebody on the other coast. Okay. All right. So I've been forgetting to drink my water. I have joined a step bet. If you don't know anything about step bet, it's a little app where you put money on the line and you are supposed to walk a certain number of steps every day, usually 6 days a week. And it's a 6-week thing. So if you miss your steps, you lose your money. If you get all your steps, then you split the money with all the other people who didn't lose their money. Anyway, so I signed up, and the first week is called the warm-up week. So if you don't make your steps the first week, it's okay. You're still in the game. Well, it's a good thing because I signed up for 3 at a time. And this was the first week for all 3 of them. I haven't made my steps a single day this whole week. And so, and some of it might be because like, I know it's not going to kick me out. So maybe the importance of it, like, will remind me, but like, I have tried to make my steps every single day. Like in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to make my steps today. And then I go to bed and I'm like, crap, I didn't make my steps today. And I'm talking like not even close because I just keep forgetting to get out there and put my steps in, or I'll get in there and I'll get some steps in the morning and I won't finish making the rest of the steps for the night. I only have to, and I have been walking so little lately that my goals are really low, like 7,000 steps. And I haven't even been able to make those. So I have forgotten my steps every single day, all 6 days this week. So I'm hoping that when Monday starts on week 2, like if I miss my steps from those, I'm out for the whole rest of the game. So I'm hoping I can remember, but gosh, I only get 1 day off a week. So I can forget once every 7 days and that's it. So I forgot all of those. I have another little YouTube channel where I read a section of the Bible every day. And it's like you're supposed to spend it's a 365 days, read the Bible in a year. And I'm supposed to do like one little reading. It's about a 15-minute reading every day. And I put one out every day. 2 times this week I forgot. And so I missed it. I went back and did 2 the next day. So I'm still caught back up. But like, it's the first time I've ever forgotten. And I started on January 1st. And it's the first and second time I've forgotten because I forgot 2 times this week. So I haven't forgotten in the whole 3 months since January started. And this week I forgot twice. So I don't know what is going on. I had one order from Etsy from like some fabric or whatever. And I had 5 days to ship it. And I totally forgot to ship it on time. And so now I've got to ship it out on Monday and it's late. And I just like totally just forgot. I just forgot. I looked at it and I was like, oh man, I got 5 days to ship this thing. And then I didn't think about it again. I totally forgot to do it. So I looked on my thing and I was like, oh crap, it's overdue, which means to make up for it, I'm going to have to, I don't have to, but if I'm late on shipping, which I hardly ever am, but I'm just going to refund her shipping. I'm going to like refund her for the shipping part. And it's not really going to make up for the time, but I can't turn back time. So, I'll give her a little refund for that. But still, I forgot. Um, and then I recently joined the choir about, I don't know, maybe a month ago or just over a month ago for my church. And we have choir practice on Sunday afternoons that is not really required. None of it's required, but hardly anybody goes on Sundays. But then Wednesday nights, we have choir practice also, and they really like for everybody to come on Wednesday nights. Well, I on Sunday, I was going to go both days this week because we have like a really important performance coming up, and I want to learn all the songs. And so Sunday, I just completely forgot to go. And I was like, well, okay. Well, that's okay because it's Sunday, but for sure on Wednesday. Well, Wednesday comes and goes, and we're going through, and I look down, and I think with the time changing, it's always like it's earlier. How should I say it? It looks earlier than it is. So I'm looking outside and it's still light. And I look down, it's past 7:00 and I'm supposed to be there at 6:45. And it's right across the street, but I hadn't even like gotten up, got in the shower. I was dressed in like, yoga pants or whatever. So by the time I would have gotten up, gotten ready and gone over there, it would have almost been time to end. So I just lost track of time, totally forgot to go to choir practice on Sunday and on Wednesday. Missed it both days. So all that happened in just the last 2 weeks. And I'm sure I've forgotten some other things too, but like I'm on spring break this week. So I guess my mind was like, okay, spring break, we're just not going to do anything, including the things that you still are supposed to do. Like not only did I not go to work, but I didn't go to choir. My kids didn't go to therapy. Like my purse didn't come with me to where I was supposed to go. Like this whole week, I have forgotten just about everything. And it's really frustrating to me when that happens because I don't like being that way. I don't like being absent-minded. I don't like forgetting stuff. I don't like being late. I don't like canceling. Like I don't like letting people down. I just, it gets on my nerves. I've kind of beat myself up about it. So, we have somebody, IB. Hello, Leo from Ingrid in the Netherlands. Hello. I knew we were going to have somebody from another part of the world, another country. And Linda from Southern California. All right. So thank you guys for coming. And I'm hoping that this will like let you feel better about the fact that I am 4.5, almost 5 years in. And I'm like having a severe case of widow brain this last week or two. And it's really frustrating. But as I've done this research and looked up some of the reasons why, I think that maybe I'm having some widow's brain for JP because his birthday is coming up in a few weeks, and also the anniversary of his late wife's death. And so she died on the 17th of April, and then a week later he buried her on the 24th, which was also his birthday. So now every year when he has his birthday, he has to remember that that was the anniversary of burying her. So he buried her on his birthday. And so maybe I'm having some like, in honor of him or her, or like, I don't know, maybe it's deferred, what they call deferred. I don't know. Maybe. I'm glad you remember today. I know I worried about that. I was like, here I am supposed to be talking about widow's brain. And if I forget today to show up, wouldn't that be, pretty meta? So I had to make sure that I did not forget. I have been sitting here for like an hour just watching other videos on YouTube and just sitting here so that I would not forget. Because even in the morning, I'll remember. I'm like, oh yeah, Carter has to go to therapy today at 1:00. And then I'll remember again at 10 and I remember again at 11. And then the day goes by and I'm like, crap, I forgot to take him to therapy. So it's not like I forget the whole day. Like I'll forget from 1 hour to the next. But anyway, okay, so now let's talk about the science behind it. Like what actually happens in your body, what actually happens in your brain when we start to grieve, from either anticipated grief, like when we're dealing with the anticipation of a loved one dying, or if there's sudden grief, like right at that moment when you start your really fresh, sudden, heavy grief, and then how it kind of evolves over time. And so it was really interesting when I did the research to find out what actually happens in our brain and in our body and in our hormones and things like that. And once I started reading about it and understanding, like I said, it's kind of no wonder. If you're not suffering from widow's brain, then kudos to you, because I doubt that there's very many people out there who are not suffering in some way from it because of all the stuff that just goes on in our body when we start to grieve. Okay. So, first of all, if you think about having a broken heart, grieving from a broken heart, you can probably also think of it as having a broken brain, because the way that your brain works and how it processes your grief, it really has a lot to do with the rest of your body. So if you think about a person with a broken leg, they either can't walk or they're gonna walk a lot slower than they did before, and everybody else. So when you're grieving, you have a broken brain in a way. And so it stands to reason that it's not going to function the same way. It's not going to function as quickly. It's not going to function as efficiently, because there's a lot of stuff that's going on. So kind of bear with me on the scientific part, and you might have to watch this over again to try to get like, all the scientific stuff. I'll try not to bog you down with too much sciencey stuff, but it's really kind of interesting the way that it all, works inside of our bodies. And also, I watched a few videos of other people explaining it and scientists explaining it, read some articles about it. And so I kind of picked up on some of their little things so that I could pass them on to you. So one person was talking about, it was a therapist actually. She talked about the 4 Ds. She said that you're disorganized, distracted, disoriented, and distraught. Those are some heavy Ds, right? And so basically that's what's going on. You're disorganized, like you cannot figure things out. Your brain is like all over the place. You're distracted. There's a lot of things going on that normally wouldn't go on. You're disoriented because you've been thrown into this life that you are not familiar with. And you're distraught. Obviously, you're going through a lot of emotional pain. Also, there's something that's called cognitive overload. And it's exactly what it sounds. Cognitive means thinking, and then overload, obviously, you're overloaded. So you're overloaded with thoughts, decisions, feelings that have to get processed through your brain. And so you're suffering from cognitive overload. A lot of this came up also in like the COVID aftermath. And so a lot of people in this COVID pandemic are also suffering from cognitive overload because of all the changes and emotions and, things that are going on in our world, in our country, in our jobs. And so it's not the same thing as the grief that we're suffering from, but our brains are reacting a lot of the same ways as a grief brain would be reacting. And so, and now that we're grieving in the middle of the pandemic, we're suffering from double cognitive overload, the overload of our grief and the overload of this pandemic that's affecting us in so many other ways and everybody else around us. And so, it affects your short-term memory, because you have so much going on in your brain at one time that you can only hold a certain amount of thoughts in your mind at one time. That's short-term memory. And then you take that into working memory. So it's whatever you're attending to at the time, that's your working memory. And then you take your working memory and you cycle it around and around and around, and you put it into your long-term memory. And so widow's brain or widow's fog really deals with mostly your short-term memory and your working memory, because you have so much shit going on in your mind at one time. It's like juggling. You can only juggle so many balls at one time. And when people keep throwing more balls in your hands, or in your brain, eventually you start dropping stuff until eventually you might drop everything. And so that's basically what cognitive overload is. So, and another widow's brain is not just forgetting stuff. Like we think about, oh, widow's brain, we forget stuff all the time. And that is a big part of it. You forget your keys and they might already be in your hand. You call somebody to ask them if they know where the last time you saw your phone, and you're calling them on your phone. Like I have called my coworker before and asked her to come let me into the building because I left my keys inside the room the day before, when my keys were actually around my neck at that moment. So those are like, absent-minded things that happen. That's probably the most palpable type of brain fog. But brain fog is also the inability to concentrate. So you cannot think of something, like you cannot keep your mind on something, you can't concentrate, you're constantly distracted, your brain's kind of fuzzy, or there's so much going on in your brain you can't decide on things. Decision making is impaired because there's so much going on in your mind, you cannot make a decision. One of the examples that I read about was interesting. This woman said that her mind was so preoccupied that her son was like, "Okay, think of an apple." She said, "It's not that I couldn't think of an apple; it's that I couldn't decide what kind of apple, what size of apple, what color apple. Was it shiny? Did it have a bite taken out of it? Was it a drawing of an apple? Was it a picture of an apple? Was it an apple I'd seen before? Was it an apple that was hanging from a tree?" So you see how her mind could not set on one, just like a picture of an apple, because she was so her mind was going around of so many details, she could not even settle on one image of an apple because of all the other stuff that was going on in her brain. So that's a very simple example of why we have such a hard time making decisions. It's hard enough to make a decision what are you going to wear that day, or how you're going to fix your hair that day, or what are you going to eat for lunch, for dinner. But on top of that, now you're having to make really big decisions, especially in the beginning. You have to make funeral decisions. You have to make money decisions. You have to make decisions about your living arrangements. Like there's a lot of big decisions that you have to make in a time when your brain and your body is the least able to be able to make decisions at that moment. So the three things that are probably the most prevalent with widow's brain is the lack of focus or concentration. That's one big thing. Increase in forgetfulness. That's another big thing. And then the third thing is an increase in tiredness or fatigue. And the reason why is because your brain is on overload. Your heart is on overload. Your emotions are on overload. Your hormones are on overload, and it's wearing you out. So you're burning out really fast. So you might have slept, and you might not be able to sleep. So on top of that, you might be having trouble sleeping. And even if you are getting enough sleep, you're worn out before lunch every day because your brain and your body is on overload. All right. And so let's talk about brain-wise and chemical-wise, what happens in your body when you are dealing with grief. All right. And it can also start happening when you are in caregiving. So if you are dealing with a terminal illness of a loved one and it's kind of happening ahead of time and you're caring for them, you probably are already entering into this kind of stress. But if not, then it will start happening like basically right when you start grieving. And so the loss of your person is known as a stressor. All right. Just like any other thing, a stressor is something that puts stress on you. And it's a big one. It's probably the biggest one you will ever experience in your life. Okay. So it's a stressor. So the stressor, I'm going to get into some scientific stuff about your brain. Okay. So the stressor causes your pituitary gland in your brain to release a chemical. I don't even want to try to say the long word, but the letters it stands for is ACTH. Okay. It's this chemical that's released by your brain. This chemical sends a signal. I'm reading my notes. This chemical sends a signal to your adrenal glands, which are in your midsection, to produce cortisone. You probably have heard of this. Okay, so when we release cortisone, they talk about it on commercials a lot. Cortisone, it causes you to like store belly fat, right? That's what they always talk about. Well, when you go through stress, you release cortisone. Cortisone makes you store belly fat, but that's a physical manifestation. But cortisone is a stress hormone. All right. So your brain tells this hormone to tell your other glands to produce this cortisone. All right. When you go through a temporary stress, your hormones that are released is adrenaline. Okay. So like you almost get into a car wreck, which is what happened to my son yesterday. It dumps in this huge amount of chemical called adrenaline, right? And it like increases your heart rate, and it makes you like, first it makes you be able to react. And then when the adrenaline like drains from your body, then after that, you have that like weak feeling where you're weak and your heart is beating really fast and you're like trying to calm yourself down. That is the physical effects of that hormone of adrenaline. Well, when we're going through grief, it's not a huge dumping of adrenaline at one time. It is a constant, prolonged dumping and bombarding of this cortisone in your body for long periods of time. When you have long periods of time of cortisone being dumped into your body, it weakens your immune system. So this is why a lot of times, like people who lose a spouse might suffer from an illness within a short period of time after they die. Sometimes when like older people, they'll say, well, she died of a broken heart. She actually might have, because the cortisone got dumped into her body and her immune system got lowered. And then she got around something that her body couldn't heal from. And then she got sick and then she died. And so it would seem like, and maybe it happened a couple months after her husband died. And so it would seem like she actually did die of a broken heart. But physically, that's what happened in her body to cause all these things that happened. All right. And so another thing that happens when cortisone gets dumped into your body for long periods of time is that when your immune system is weakened, you easily get sick and you also feel fatigue. So you're tired. And when you're tired, your brain doesn't work as well. Like, when you're tired, you can't concentrate, you can't think, you can't focus. It's kind of like that, but you're tired all the time. All right. In the short term, let's talk about what happens to your brain in the short term and in the long term of grief. So in the short term of grief, your brain is traumatized. It becomes what's called bottom heavy. So the bottom parts of your brain is what deals with primal, primitive feelings. Okay. It's like it goes down to your caveman primitive actions. All right. So that's what the bottom part of your brain does. And so the bottom part of your brain is like overactive in that short term. And the primitive area, one of the primitive areas is the fear center. And so your fear reactors, I guess you could call it, are being overactive. And so it gives you increased feelings of stress and despair. So in the short term of grief, your brain is dumping these chemicals into your body that is increasing your stress level, your fear level, your despair level. It's like you're actively feeling all these feelings. You might recognize this because you might either be in that situation or you might remember being in that situation in the beginning of your fresh grief. The higher areas of your brain are underactive at that time, and your higher areas of your brain are the areas that regulate emotion. And so when your upper brain is not working right, because your lower brain, your caveman brain, your primitive brain is like on overdrive, which means the top of your brain, which is the part that helps you to figure things out, your modern part of your brain, is underactive. It's not working as much, which means it's harder to recover from irritation. So you might get aggravated more easily. You might get irritated more easily. You might fly off the handle and it takes you longer to calm down from things as easily. I noticed this happen to me and I could not explain why. Now it makes sense. But for about from the start of my grief until about 3 years in, my startle reflex was so bad that I could just be standing there in the kitchen and one of my kids would come up and be like, "Hey, Mom," and I would be like, "Oh," and I would drop things and like fall to the floor, and my startle reflex was way overactive. And my kids are like, "What is wrong with you, Mom? All I did was call your name and you like crumpled to the floor." Like, it was a jump scare, like in the movies when a jump scare, but it was like every time my kid called my name. And then when I remarried, my husband would come into the bathroom. I'd be fixing my hair or something like that. And he would just like, "Hey, babe." And I would just like, the jump reflex was, I don't understand why, but I'd drop everything that was in my hands. It would fall to the floor and I'd scream out. And they're like, "What is wrong with you?" I was like, "I don't know." But it was like I was, scared all the time. And I did not know why. It has finally started to level out a little bit over the last year or so. But I think it's because of that whole, brain issue. And so that is kind of what happens in fresh grief. So probably like from the beginning of grief through your first 6 to 12 months. I mean, everybody's different on timelines. I'm just kind of giving you a general. Then you go over to long term, what your brain does in the long term of grief. So over time, these early responses, they give way to deep sadness, or feelings of depression. And so this is where the two parts of your brain, you might recognize these names, something called the amygdala. So the amygdala is changing. The amygdala is supposed to regulate your sleep and your mood. And so your amygdala is on overdrive. It is not functioning properly because of your grief. And so there are problems with sleeping, either sleeping too much or not sleeping enough, and regulating your mood. So this is where maybe your complicated grief might start coming in, where you feel feelings of anger, despair, like nothing's ever going to get better, and you're having trouble getting out of that valley of grief that we've talked about before. That's because of your amygdala. There's also changes in something called your hippocampus. You might remember this from like biology in high school, but your hippocampus, get this, processes your memory and regulates your stress hormones. Well, does that make sense? So it affects your memory, so you can't remember crap, and it affects your stress hormones. So you're stressed out all the time. You feel like you're stressed out all the time. That is a chemical reaction from a actual part of your brain as a result, a direct result of long-term grief. Does that not like make perfect sense suddenly why your brain's not working right? To me, it was like all these aha moments, like, oh my gosh, that's why I felt this way. That's why this was happening to me. That's why I cannot remember anything and my brain does not work properly. And as you may know, when it was about a year ago or so, I got to the point where I could not function, like I could not focus or function. And I went to the doctor, and I had already kind of suspected this, but I got diagnosed with ADHD. And I know I've always had it. I've always had it, but I've always been able to, like I wasn't diagnosed with it, but I kind of knew, yeah, I probably got ADD or ADHD, what they call it now. And I've always joked about it, like, yeah, I probably got it, but girls weren't diagnosed with it when we were little. It was always the boys that couldn't sit still in their seats, but I never got diagnosed with it. I never felt like I needed to because I always was able to cope. I had always figured out how to cope. Well, suddenly when I was grieving, I could no longer cope. And so I went to the doctor. I got diagnosed officially with it, and I got on some medication, and it was life-changing for me. Like I almost can't function without my medicine now. But I think what happened was I was able to always manage it and handle it until I was dealing with grief on top of it. And it just made it to where I couldn't handle it anymore. And so then I finally had to break down and say, okay, I can't deal with this anymore. So I went to the doctor, got my medicine, tried a few different doses and different types or whatever. And I'm still kind of tweaking it a little bit, but at this point, I don't take it every day, but I know if I really need to be like on, if it's important, like when I'm having to work on paperwork and I'll have to go to work and, get things done. If I need to get anything done, I got to take my medicine. If I'm going to lay around and have a break and just lay around and watch TV all day, I don't need it on those kind of days. All right. And so some of our body functions that you will see changes in while you're in this grief and your brain is doing all these things to your body is, like I said, you will sleep too much or not sleep enough. You will forget things. And this is where the whole widow's brain comes along, and you get stuck in what's called a brain fog. So it's either you can't remember anything or you can't concentrate on anything. All right. And so as you go through these stages, so the general stages of grief, in the beginning, it's numbness and denial. And then you start going into intense grief where you actually start realizing this is a real thing and you're feeling the feelings in full force. Then you might switch over to the anger and the guilt. You're really mad about things, or you feel guilty about things you didn't say, or you wish, you have this intense feeling of you wish they would come back, and you're really mad about situations that might have caused the death and things like that. And then you finally go into this feeling, this stage or phase of acceptance. That's a very, very simplified version of, the process that we go through, and we go back and forth sometimes to those stages. But, that's a general idea of how you go from the beginning of grief until you finally get to where you're in the acceptance stage, to where you are trying to focus on yourself, focus on your life, and what are you going to do from here on out for the rest of it. So now we talked about identifying it, the symptoms of it, and the scientific reason behind why all these things are happening. And so that alone might make you feel better. Like, okay, no wonder I feel like this. No wonder I can't function like I used to, because these things are all happening in my body. However, now we need to talk about what can we do to help, to help ease these symptoms, to improve, so that if you have a job you have very important things that you have to accomplish and you can't remember anything, like, it might be very important for you to be able to get a handle on this, right? So, and not to mention, it's just freaking frustrating all the time to like not be able to remember anything. That's my big thing. It's so frustrating to like, I feel like I'm dumb and I've never experienced this kind of feeling before. Like, I've always been a pretty smart kid and been able to remember stuff. And suddenly I can't remember anything. It's so frustrating. So anyway, so let's talk about some things that can help. There's no way to like, reverse this. There's no way to fast forward through it. Like, you really just kind of have to go through the process. But there are ways that you can sort of help to reduce the effects and help to get yourself through it as painlessly as possible. And just to kind of help manage yourself during the process. The biggest part is going to be time. So yes, you will probably suffer from it in some way, shape, or form. And yes, it does get better. Even if you don't do any of these things to make it help better, time helps you to level things out, and it does get better. When I first started experiencing this forgetfulness all the time, I had no idea about widow's brain. I didn't know what it was called. I didn't know it existed. I seriously thought I was getting Alzheimer's. I was like, oh my God, I think I might be getting Alzheimer's. I can't remember anything. And then I started doing research and finding out, oh, okay, and it was, in my first year of grief. And so I was like, okay, well, at least it made me feel better to know that it probably wasn't Alzheimer's. It was probably widow's brain, and it was going to get better. And it's still not, like I said, I've suffered from it so bad this last 2 weeks that maybe my brain is just going through like a little mini relapse or something. But it does make me feel better to know that it's not this bad all the time. And that even if I have some relapses, it's not ever going to be like it was in the very beginning. All right. So here are some things. I'm going to give you a list of a few things that will help. Okay. So therapy and different types of therapy. And I don't mean like necessarily like call a therapist to make an appointment necessarily, but you could do group therapy. And so you could find Grief Share is a good example of group therapy, specifically for grieving people. I will tell you that it is faith-based. And so if you're averse to that, just know that going in. It's usually held at a church, and they are going to talk about God, and they are going to talk about faith. It's not all they talk about, but it's the center of it. So just know that going in. But I've been to a few Grief Share meetings. The therapy itself is awesome. The DVDs are a little long. Like, I feel like they could cut them a little shorter, but the information is really good. And the group atmosphere of everybody who's there is going through similar types of grief. And so when you share and talk about it, really helpful. The reason why I did not continue to go completely through the program is because there's just one person in particular that was kind of taking over the meetings, and it became this person's show, and really nice person, but just kind of took over. And it was really hard to get a word in edgewise because she would talk and wouldn't stop. Or if you start talking, she would cut you off and then take over with her own story. And it was just, I didn't want to get into it with her. So I just stopped going. So I think maybe if I go with a different group, maybe it was just a mix of people I just did not jihad with. But the program itself I highly recommend it to try it if you think about it. You could go to individual therapy. So you could call a therapist and maybe talk with somebody. It wasn't for me. It may be for you. Worth a try. And there's something called CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. You can do that with a therapist. You can also do some research, but it's a specific exercises in your mind so that you recognize negative thoughts and you replace them with positive thoughts. And it's an exercise that you have to do, and it's something you have to do over and over, and you have to train your brain to think in a different way. It takes a lot of time and a lot of practice, and it's usually done with the help of a therapist. But it's done a lot with children, and it can be very effective if you try to do that. And then sharing with others. So maybe, like our Facebook group. If you go to our Facebook group, if you're not in our Facebook group, you need to go there and join. I'm going to put the thing in the chat. Facebook.com. Let me make sure I'm doing it right. Groups. One Happy Widow. Make sure I spelled it right. It's facebook.com/group/One Happy Widow. Make sure you answer all 3 of the questions. Make sure you put your email address in there. Make sure you say yes to the rules. If you don't do those things, you get kicked out. Like you don't get accepted in. And I just do that to keep all the creeps out. So, basically just make sure you answer those questions. But most of the people who are here are probably already in the group. And if you're not, I highly recommend that you go in there, because the group, the members of the group are very supportive. They're very positive. They're very uplifting. It's a non-judgmental area. There's not really, like, I haven't really had I don't think I've had any issues except for a couple of creeps that have made their way through, and instantly they told me about it and I got rid of them. And other than that, it's a very positive, uplifting, nice group of people there. So I highly recommend going there. Okay. So another thing that can help you is exercise. And it doesn't mean you have to go join CrossFit, or start running marathons or whatever, but move your body, go for a walk, start working out. Exercise improves your mood. It improves your memory, and it improves your thought processing. So those are all the 3 things that are kind of affecting us with widow's brain. So get out there and start walking, and that will be at least one step in the right direction. Remember the times with those that we lost. So giving yourself some time, to just sit and remember them. And that way you kind of know that their legacy still lives on through you. That will, kind of help with the feelings of being lonely and lost. So, and also, like I said, brain fog can be the inability to make a decision. That's why a lot of times I say, don't make any big decisions in the first year. I don't necessarily agree with that wholeheartedly, but that's the reason behind it. It's just because they know that a lot of people are suffering brain-wise from being able to make decisions. And so if it's hard for you to make small decisions, then it's even harder for you to make big decisions. And so that's where that comes from. And so, I mean, I can see scientifically why they would say that, but I don't necessarily think that that is the case for everybody. All right. Now I'm going to give you, I have a list of 14 steps, and I'm not going to go real depth, but I'm just going to list these steps that I came across while I was doing my research of things that can help clear your mind of brain fog. So I'm going to go through the list, then I'm going to open up the floor and go through the chats and see if there's any interesting stories and anything else that you want to share or answer questions that you have. Okay. So here are just some things that can help clear your mind of brain fog. Mindfulness. You might have seen this before. Being present in the moment. So just look up some ways that you can be more mindful. The most common one that I've seen lately is it's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, using your senses. It's just like having to be present in the moment. So like think of 5 things that you can see and pick out 5 things, and then pick 4 things that you can hear and, be present in that. And then 3 things that you can touch, and 2 things that you can taste, and 1 thing you can smell. Something similar to that. But all it is taking your brain. It's just focusing on like the present moment right then, because all this other stuff is out there affecting your brain. It's like, it's a way to get just to calm the clutter in your brain. Be mindful. Number 2 is meditation. So first stop, take a deep breath, hold it in for 5 seconds and let it out slowly. And then meditate in whatever way that you want to do that. Okay. That alone right there just calmed me down. Just a little, but it does work. All right. Write things down. That's what I'm going to have to start doing, because I can't keep it all up here. So I have to write down my lists because I keep forgetting so much stuff. I'm going to have to keep writing things down. I'm pretty good at planning, but I need to get better at writing things down, or at least putting in your calendar on your phone or something like that. Number 4, break tasks into smaller chunks. So if your brain can't handle a bunch of things at once, just make a list and then just do one thing at a time. So you don't have to think so much. You can just focus on doing. I'm going to turn my heater off. It's burning me up. Okay. Think through the steps of your task first. So instead of just jumping right in, think about the big picture of what you're about to do. And so you can sort of picture yourself getting it done, and then that will maybe help you a little bit in tackling the first step. Relate to doing things similar that you've done before. So if you're doing something, be like, okay, this is similar to, if you're going to be driving a truck, be like, okay, well, I can drive a car. And so this has got to be something similar to driving a car, and it can't be that much different. So just try to relate it to something familiar so that something that you're trying new is not quite so new. Try to get enough sleep. I know that's easier said than done, but if you're not sleeping, you're not going to be able to function. And so try your meditation at night. Try to turn, they say turn off all of your blue lights and your phones and your TVs and stuff at least an hour before bedtime. There's just a bunch of different little things that you can try to help you sleep better. Maybe take some supplements. I don't know how I feel about melatonin. I've heard a lot of good and bad things about it, so I'm not going to really be a proponent, but I'm just saying, there's people out there who swear by it. CBD helps really good if it's legal in your state. So just investigate on some things that might help you to get to sleep and maybe to stay asleep. Number 8 is journal. Okay. So write your thoughts down in a journal. And I think that this is very, very helpful, especially in the beginning. Write down your feelings, write down your thoughts, write it down. And then to go back, it's more important, I think, to go back than it is to write it down. So when you go back and you read, you can actually see how far you've come. You can see your growth. You can see your progress. It's like taking a picture of yourself on the first day of a diet. You don't want to do it, but you go ahead and do it anyway, so that when you have lost 10 pounds, you can look back and say, ooh, I see a difference. But you won't notice it every day when you look in the mirror because it's so gradual. Grief and like healing through your grief process is gradual like that. You could sit and watch your fingernails all day long. You're not going to see them grow. But you can look at them from one point and then look back at them, and you can tell. Like if you're growing your hair out, you're going to look in the mirror. Every day you look in the mirror, it looks exactly the same, but it's growing. And over several months' time, you'll notice that it gets longer and longer, but you won't notice it until you look back over longer periods of time. So grief is the same kind of thing. All right. And then also, probably not up there, but it will be One Happy Widow. If this link doesn't work today, it's going to work soon. I'm putting up the journal. Like I said, if that link doesn't work today, it should work pretty soon. But anyway, it'll be up there. I have some journal pages for you that you can print out. They're just free blank pages that you can print and make yourself a little journal if you want to. But write some stuff down. I'll have some prompts on there too. It's something I'm kind of working on. All right. Eat healthy and drink water. I mean, we know it's obvious, but sometimes we just don't do it. So be more mindful of what you put in your mouth and how much water you're drinking. Note to self, I got to do that too. Reduce stimulation. So sometimes it's impossible to do that with kids screaming and job and phones ringing and TV on and somebody complaining and asking questions. But try to take a moment and just kind of like close the door, get a moment to yourself and just do the whole breathing thing. Try to reduce all the stimulation and just focus on one thing at a time. Spend some time in nature. So now that it's springtime, it might be getting better weather. Go outside, go for a walk, unless you have really severe allergies like the people in Georgia do. And we are suffering. I don't have allergies, but my husband and friends, they all are suffering from all of this pollen. But anyway, go outside, spend some time in nature and look at the trees, listen to the birds, listen to the brook in the background, or, just commune with nature. It's always healing. Find your flow by immersing in a hobby. So pick up a hobby if you haven't already, or a book, or something, but something where your attention is all focused on one thing for a while, and then you forget about all the other stuff. So sometimes we just need to give our brains an escape, and doing a hobby is a good way because we're really focused on that because we're interested in it and it's making us happy, and we're forgetting about all the other crap that's going on in our brain. So it kind of just helps focus on one thing for a while. Do something creative. So that could be along the lines of the hobby, but paint or draw or crochet or sew or I don't know, what's some other creative stuff? Do macrame or design something on your clothes or whatever. I can't think of all the different creative stuff. I've named all the things I like to do, but be creative, create something. do origami. I don't know. Um, and while you're doing that, again, your brain is focusing so much on that, and your creative juices are flowing. And so the feel good hormones are in your body. And so, you're just not really thinking about your grief. You're just thinking about that thing in the moment. And then the last thing is to connect with others. So we've already kind of talked about that, but find people who are going through what you're going through and talk about it with them, because it's always nice to know that other people are going through what you're going through, and you're not alone, because you're not. And if you have widow's brain and you're worried that something's wrong with you, always go to the doctor if you really think something's wrong with you. I'm not saying just ignore it, but I'm saying that more than likely, if you're suffering from some of those things and this sounds familiar to you, instead of worrying, oh my gosh, maybe I have a brain tumor or dementia or whatever, instead of them automatically thinking that, start to reevaluate, like maybe it's widow's brain, and try some of those things and see if it helps calm your brain. If you still have other issues or questions, then for sure go to the doctor. I would never say don't, but I'm just saying it's probably, if you think it probably is, it probably is. And hopefully that will make you feel better. So I am done with my presentation, and I know it was a long one, but I think it was, I think there was a lot of information that might be useful to you. And I'm going to go back and see if if you've had some, maybe even some funny stuff that you've forgotten, or if you've experienced this in some way, share your experiences. Or if you have questions, I'm going to look through the chat and I'm going to address some things. So I don't want to go too far back, because caregiving zombie brain here. Yep. Okay. So like I said, caregivers can go through that as well, because you got a lot on you at the same time, and you're already pre-grieving. Yes. Okay. PEG says ACTH. I could have written it down, but I didn't want to try to. Adrenocorticotropic hormone. There it is. So she knows about it. Thank you for your honest confessions. Now I don't feel so guilty. So this is why I share the things that I share, because some of them can be embarrassing. But like, I know if you hear me talk about it, then you're like, okay, at least I'm not the only person who's going through this. All right. It's like the grieving I did not do when my husband first died. July last year, I'm doing now. I've lost so much motivation to complete any of my goals. So delayed grief is very common, because in the very beginning, you're kind of numb and you're just going robotic and you're going through the motions and you're just doing it. And then later on, the reality of the real grief and the longevity of it and the permanence of it kind of hits in. And sometimes that grief gets a little delayed. So that's normal. I can relate to that, Pamela. I thought maybe I had grief PTSD. I'm the same way, Pam. No motivation. Lost my husband, mother, and sister in 3 years. My mind races all the time and can't complete any task. So, Becky, that's sounds like grief brain to me. Sounds like widow's brain to me. So maybe some of those things that I listed might be a little bit helpful for you to try. Thank goodness she went over the brain function. Certainly helps to understand things. So yeah, when I was learning about it, even I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. It's a little scientific, but it's still, it kind of breaks it down for me and gives me validation. So I'm not just like this kooky, forgetful, loony or whatever. I am like, I have a real thing going on inside me that's causing these things to happen. And so that kind of gives me hope that it'll get better. Let's see. It will be 3 months on Monday, married almost 33 years, 13 children, 6 still at home. I'm still in a serious fog. All help is gone, awake all night in a fog all day. So at 3 months, Lynette, is about the time where everybody who was helping you kind of goes and gets on with their real life. Between 2 and 3 months is usually the time when like everybody leaves you. They might check in here and there, but like the constant, like, how are you doing? Can I fix you dinner? Can I help you with the kids? Is there anything I can do? Kind of goes away after about the second month. And then you're kind of left with, well, what now? Like, where's all that help everybody said they were going to offer? And they're like, just let me know if you need something. Like, and most of the time we have trouble asking for help. And so Lynette, you're kind of in that point where you're just now getting to where everybody sort of went on with their life. And there you are with your children, and 13 children, 6 still at home. Wow. So I'm hoping that maybe your older children can help you, with the younger ones. I mean, I had 4 at home, and I thought I would lose my mind. And my oldest one was an adult, and she could help me a lot. And so, but yeah, it is tough. And we all know that raising grieving children is really hard. I do a lot of sticky notes all over my house, Linda says. So that's a good idea. Sticky notes. I might have to try that. My husband does that actually. He does that a lot. When he's going to the store, he writes down what he needs. He did this today. He writes down what he needs and he puts it right there on his chest like a little kid. And so he puts it right there so he won't forget. So, or maybe put it on a note on your phone, so that you don't have to put a sticky note on your shirt. Lynette, it seems like the nights will never end. Sometimes nights are tough. I have no problems getting to sleep, and I am not trying to brag, but golly, I have no problems falling asleep, and I really have no problem staying asleep most of the time. But I think my problem is the other way. Like, I don't like to get up. I don't like to wake up. I am not a morning person. I probably would sleep too much if I was allowed to, and so. But I think a lot of people who suffer from insomnia, it's because their brain doesn't shut off. And so they can't stop thinking about things because your brain has got to, shut down before you can go to sleep. And so if you have a lot of anxiety and a lot of thoughts in your brain that you can't shut off, that's a lot of times what causes the insomnia. So in cases like that, you may need something to help you. You may need a supplement, or you may need to go to the doctor and see if there's something that they can prescribe that will help you. Depending on how you feel about that. Even Benadryl sometimes, believe it or not, Benadryl is like a really, really mild, how it makes you fall asleep. You give Benadryl to a kid and it knocks them out because it's people who have mild anxiety. Like when I was pregnant and they didn't want to give me like a real anti-anxiety medication. She was like, if you start feeling like you're going to have a panic attack and you're getting real highly anxious, she said, take a Benadryl because it will kind of bring you down a little bit and then help you to rest and probably knock you out and let you take a nap. So anyway, that's something to try. It's over the counter. Let's see. On my second round of grief share. So Marcia says she's doing grief share. And so if she's on her second round, I'm assuming that it must be working for you. So I think there's a lot of good in it. I think it just depends on who is in your group, like the mix of people. Lynette, you need to sleep to help you through the next day. Yes. I did 2 grief shares and the second one was not as good for me either. So Linda says, and again, I think it just depends on who is a part of the group and who's in there. Marcia says, try another one. Tim says it will be 3 months on Tuesday. I make lists and cross off one at a time, married over 19 years. Okay, that's an idea. Make a list and then just cross it off. So that way you feel that sense of accomplishment. I like that idea. Marcia says I'm doing CBT. So hopefully that helps for you. I don't know how long, I don't know how slow of a process it is, or if it just depends on the person. I've never actually been through it. On paper, I know what it means and is, but I don't have personal experience with going through treatment with it. Lynette says, Becky, yes, my days are full and the only time I grieve or think is at night. So Lynette, you're saving all of your grief and you're holding it off because you're so busy being a mom. And then that's when all the thoughts are coming back and invading your brain. So maybe try some meditation at night before you go to bed and see if that might help. Let's see. Hello from Pennsylvania. I lost my husband in January and my mom lost her husband in March. Your videos have helped a lot. So thank you, Michelle. I'm glad that I'm trying to make more and on different topics so that it can help people in some way. I so appreciate this cast. Very helpful to process through the things. Jana says, I'm so clumsy. What's up with that? Jana, if you're clumsy and you weren't clumsy before, that's that's like a total part of the widow's brain thing. If you really are worried about it, then of course, see a doctor, but I think it's the clumsiness could be a result of just not having an awareness of your immediate surroundings. My husband's real clumsy, and I don't know if he said he's been like that his whole life, but it seems like he's just not, he doesn't pay attention to what's about any farther than hit this in front of his area, because he'll be about to sit down. He always sits down on the remote control in the bed. I don't know why. I never do it. And I look over and I see the remote control and I see he's about to sit down and I grab it real quick. It's like he's not aware of anything very far outside of his own area. And so that could be the mental part of it. You're just not really aware. Your spatial awareness could be off, and that could be a part of widow's brain. Laurie said, I also thought I was going crazy. until I found a widow support group with shared stories. So once you know that other people are going through it and you know why, it's like, okay, I'm not going crazy. I'm not losing my mind. This is a normal thing. Now let's figure out how to deal with it. I also found lists, journaling, and hobby of writing meaningful, creative passages are helpful. All three awesome things: making lists, writing in a journal, being creative. Three things that I think will help, and all three of them, then I'd say thumbs up to that. Hello from snowy Illinois. Snow? No, I'll pass on the snow. Thank you very much, especially in April. Linda says, I agree, Jana. I'm always dropping things and find the chairs get in my way. So yeah, I probably should have mentioned the clumsiness, but I didn't really think about it. But I think it could be because of your whole like spatial awareness thing. Marcia says grown children can be hard. Amen to that. Non-grown children can be hard too, but you'd think that once they're grown, they'd have a head on their shoulders and they'd understand a little bit, but they can still be just as selfish as everybody else. Jan says, it's not that I forget things I need to do, but just can't make myself do those things. So that's like a, not really a widow's brain thing. That's a different thing. That's a grief thing. It's grief related, but not a widow's brain thing related. It's a little bit different. So it's more of a, like an emotional response, lack of motivation, things like that. So Jana, if you're, was it Jana who said that? I can't remember who it was. I was never clumsy before. No, who was it? That says that they're not motivated. I can't remember who it was. Anyway, the person I just read their thing about motivation. If that's where my pivot course would be really helpful for you. So if you want to email me about the pivot course, I could send you a link to that because it touches on all of that kind of stuff, how to get out of that rut. Let's see. Oh, it was Jan. There you go, Jan. Michelle says, I have an infinity tattoo also on my arm. It has my husband's name, date of birth, and date of death. So I've got that. I've got this one. I got it on my honeymoon, and JP got one also. So we have matching tattoos. That one was this is for my living husband. This arm is for my non-living husband. So this is the sound tattoo, and this was his hand with his initials and his flower and all that, and it looks upside down. But I pray a lot and study scriptures that help me daily. Linda, that's I do as well. And Linda, if you're interested, I'm wanting to read the Bible. So, and I have never read the whole Bible from start to finish. So I knew that if I did this Bible reading thing on YouTube, that it would force me to do it. So I'm doing my YouTube. I can give you my other YouTube channel. I read the Bible every day, and I post a new video with the Bible reading every day. And at the end of the year, on December 31st, it will be done. And then I will have read the whole Bible, and I will have put it out there on YouTube too. So Linda, if you want to email me, I can send you a link to that. Jay says, it's been 4 long years since I lost my love. I'm finally starting to live my life and not just exist. I also took melatonin and Benadryl to sleep. So yeah, if that's what helps you, and I would rather take something mild than take something too strong, but everybody has different needs. So, and Jay, I'm glad to hear that you are starting to live your life instead of just existing. That's awesome. That's exactly what we want everybody to do. And I'm glad that you're at that point. Jana says, I was never clumsy before. So Jana, yeah, I think yours is probably a widow's brain thing. It sounds to me like it is, like it's just that spatial awareness. Tim says, do you quilt? My wife loved to quilt. I do sew. I don't quilt. I made a couple quilts, did not enjoy quilting, but I do sew like crazy and love it. I've made a lot of my own clothes. I used to make all my kids' clothes, not all of them. A lot of my kids' clothes. I sewed them diapers and stuff like that. So I would like to have like some sew-alongs or whatever with our group, but that's on down the road. Hello from Georgia, Tracy, another Georgian. It will be 3 months on the 4th of this month. Thank you for the tips for dealing with anxiety and grief. His death was unexpected. So these videos have helped a great deal. So I don't know about the unexpected part. I haven't experienced that. Mine was definitely anticipatory, but I think a lot of the grief, the things that we deal with are similar, especially on down the road. So thank you for joining in, and thank you for watching the videos. Make sure that you join our Facebook group if you haven't already, Tracy. Tim, I need to start a hobby. Welcome to the group. So yep. If you don't have a hobby, if you don't have something that you can do, then that's your next assignment. Okay. Find something that you want to do. Find a hobby. I don't care what it is. Find it and start participating in it. That's your homework assignment. Has anyone had their husband visit them in their dreams and having meaningful conversations? You know they are dead, but the conversations are pertinent. Um, I've had a few. I haven't had any recently, but I've had a few, and I don't know. I'm kind of torn about how those whole dream things work. When I first started dating JP, I had several dreams about Dewey coming to visit me, and he had come back. He's like, "Hey, I'm back. Let's go home." And I'm like, "Well, I have another husband at home, so I think it was my guilt of moving forward. It was like getting to me. I think that's what it was." Um, and I also, this is totally off topic, but I had a dream last night that I was pregnant with twins, and so that was actually, let's call that one a nightmare. So I don't really know about how dreams work. I tell myself that I need to do a lot of the things that you listed, but can't seem to get started. I was married for 47 years, lost him almost 3 years ago. I have no sense of purpose. Marcia, you are perfect candidate for the Grief Pivot course. So contact me and I can tell you about it. And if you are interested, I've made the course. It's 28 lessons and it's all about that. The whole course is about that. So you're a perfect candidate for that. So contact me if you'd like, and I can tell you about it. Pamela says, Peg, after my husband passed away 47 years, I dreamt that he ran away with another woman. So yeah, I think it's like our brain is trying to figure out our emotions somehow. And it kind of it works it out in our sleep. We were married 47 years. He died last year. Pamela, Peg says, oh my, Pamela, that would be a nightmare. I'm so sorry. 47 years. Wow. That is just, I can't even fathom 47 years. That's like, I'm 48. So that's almost as long as I've been alive. I would like to read the Bible through with your, okay. So yeah, just email onehappywidow@gmail.com. You can email me. I can send you links to anything that you need. And the other YouTube thing, I can give you that too. I had to laugh really. Yeah, I can imagine. Pamela, walking and spending time outside really helps. I agree. And now that the weather is nicer, it's going to be a lot easier to do that. Linda says, I have had dreams, Peg, and short conversations. Lynette says, Tracy, that's the same day that my husband passed. It's weird how numbers work. 17 is our big number. And my husband died on June 17th, 2017. And it was the week before our 17th wedding anniversary. So we were married for 17 years. And JP's wife died on the 17th. And he was married for 34 years, which is 17 times 2. And so, yeah, 17 is just like a number that keeps coming in. It's very, very strange how numbers work. I always appreciate the dreams when he's in them. Yeah, it's kind of like when you have a dream and they visit you, it's like you get a little freebie. You get a free visit that you didn't think you were going to get, even though it's not real, but it's like more real than just a memory because it feels like it's real. So it's kind of nice when you get visited by them in your dreams. Some people don't ever experience that, and then other people they wait for it. So it is kind of nice when it's a good dream and they come and visit you. Marcia says my husband's birthday is this month and he died this month. So yeah, that's really tough. His birthday and his death date. That is tough. And then Lynette, so sorry for your and your daughter's loss. Yeah. So sharing all of this grief together, it kind of, it makes you sad, but it also makes you feel like it is that you're not by yourself, that you're not alone. And you have people that can understand what you're going through. It's hard for me to get any kind of advice from people who have not been through what I've been through. Because I'm thinking, what do you know? And how could you know? And a lot of times people try to judge or give you advice. I'm like, what are you trying to tell me? What are you trying to tell me? Because you don't know what I'm feeling. You've never been through this before. And then it just kind of feels judgy. So it's hard not to get angry at those kinds of things. All right. So it looks like we've pretty much covered all of our topics, all of our questions. And hopefully, if you are experiencing widow's brain or if you've wondered about it, now you can maybe recognize it. So sometimes I think when you're going through it and you're able to recognize it and tell yourself, okay, this is a widow's brain going on here. I can deal with this, and then start being cognizant of it so that you can start handling it and getting more control over yourself. And then hopefully that will help. All right. So I hope that this helped you. And I know it helped me just doing the research, kind of gave me some tips on what I could do to help myself. And hopefully I can get myself out of this fog that I've been in for the last 2 weeks. Maybe going back to work will help. I don't know. But it's been rough. It's been a rough 2 weeks for my brain. So that's going to do it for this week. Thank you so much for everyone who has joined in. Join our Facebook group if you haven't already. Check out the journal pages. If there's any links, I will put them all below. And if they don't work, just email me and I can send them to you directly. You know, my website is in the process of getting like moved over. So if links don't work, we're in limbo right now. So as soon as I get it all over, but I still have the links that I can send you directly. If you want the Bible in a Year reading link, I can send you that too. I didn't want to really put it out there publicly in case anybody's not interested in that, but we're on day 94, I think now. So you can always go back and catch up with us whenever you're ready. So that's about all I have for you. And thank you so much for joining in. I appreciate you. It's like a lot of times it's the same familiar faces that I'm kind of growing to know a little bit. And then there's always like some new folks that are coming in who've just found us. So it's always nice to be able to meet new people. So that's going to do it for this week. We should have another one come out next week. I'm going to just continue to do Saturdays at 4 unless something else comes up, and I'll let you guys know. Other than that, then I guess I will see you next week. Take care of yourself. Try some of these methods and let me know. Next week, I'm going to come in and see if anybody tried anything and see if, anything helped. So, all right. Take care, guys. See you next time. Bye.